The moment my 5-year-old daughter whispered, "Daddy, am I not invited to eat?" every conversation around that expensive restaurant table faded into silence inside my head. No child should ever have to ask that question, especially not because of her own family. I looked at the empty place setting in front of little Illyra, then at the steaming meals everyone else had already started eating. 23 relatives filled the private dining room. Plates covered the table. Laughter echoed from one end to the other. Only my daughter had nothing. That wasn't a mistake. It was planned. And before the night was over, I would make one announcement that none of them saw coming. My name is Thorin Vale. For years, I convinced myself my family wasn't cruel. They were just difficult. I kept making excuses for them because that's what people do when they grow up believing love has to be earned. My older sister, Serene, had always been the favorite. She was loud, confident, the kind of person who could insult you with a smile, while everyone else laughed because they thought she was joking. Our parents adored her. If she broke something, it was an accident. If I broke something, it was proof I wasn't responsible enough. That pattern followed us into adulthood. When our father passed away, I thought grief might finally bring us together. Instead, it drove us even farther apart. Serene quietly took over organizing every family event, birthdays, anniversaries, holiday dinners. Nobody questioned it. If you wanted to stay connected to the family, you went through her. At first, I didn't notice what she was doing. Then, little things started happening. We forgot to tell you about dinner. You must have missed the group message. Oh, I thought someone invited you. Always polite.
Always believable. Always impossible to prove. My wife, Leora, noticed long before I did. They're doing this on purpose. They wouldn't. She looked at me with heartbreaking sympathy. Thor. She was the only person who called me that. People who love you don't keep forgetting you. I wanted to argue. Instead, I stayed quiet. Then life dealt us a blow far greater than family drama. Leora became sick. The diagnosis came suddenly, aggressive, unforgiving. The doctors did everything they could. So did I. For 18 months, hospitals became our second home. One evening, she asked me to wheel her outside. The sun was setting. Illyra was chasing pigeons across the courtyard. Leora smiled as she watched her. Promise me something. Anything. If I'm gone. Don't. Promise me. I couldn't breathe. Okay. Don't let her grow up believing she's unwanted. I squeezed her hand. She won't. Even if it's your own family making her feel that way. I stared at her. What do you mean? She gave me a sad smile. I see things you don't. Those were some of the last full sentences she ever spoke to me. 3 weeks later, I buried my wife. People always ask what losing someone feels like. They're wrong. The real question is, what does surviving feel like? Because surviving is the hard part. Learning how to answer your daughter's questions when she asks why mommy isn't coming home. Learning how to cook when every recipe reminds you of someone else. Learning how to smile so your child doesn't carry your sadness too. I failed at that many times, but Illyra never complained. One rainy afternoon, she climbed onto the couch beside me, holding one of Leora's old sweaters. Daddy, yeah? Mommy said superheroes don't wear capes. I smiled. What do they wear? Tired faces. That nearly broke me. Life slowly became manageable again. I took freelance accounting work from home so I could spend more time raising Illyra. What began as small contracts eventually became consulting work for growing businesses. The hours were long, the money wasn't, at first, but every satisfied client brought another recommendation. 3 years passed, then 5. Without realizing it, I'd built something much larger than a freelance career. I had founded a financial advisory firm specializing in rescuing struggling family-owned businesses. Ironically, families trusted me more than my own relatives ever had. Still, I never spoke about my work at family gatherings.
I preferred peace over attention. Maybe that was my biggest mistake. When Serene called inviting us to our mother's 70th birthday dinner, I genuinely believed things were changing. Mom really wants everyone there. I'll bring Elira. Wonderful. Her voice sounded unusually warm. You know she'd love to see her granddaughter. After we hung up, Elira ran into the kitchen. Can I wear the blue dress Mommy bought me? My throat tightened. Of course. She spun around happily. I want Grandma to see it. The restaurant looked more like a luxury hotel than a place for dinner. Crystal chandeliers, live piano music, white tablecloths. Everything screamed elegance. Mom hugged Elira. My goodness, look how big you've gotten. Elira beamed. I practiced my manners. I know you did. For a brief moment, it actually felt like family. Then everyone sat down, menus disappeared, orders were taken, conversations started flowing. 20 minutes later, servers began bringing out plates: steak, salmon, pasta, roasted vegetables. One by one, every seat received food, except ours. I looked around. Maybe ours were delayed. The waitress returned carrying another tray. Still nothing. Finally, I politely raised my hand. Excuse me? She smiled. Yes, sir? I think we're still waiting for 2 meals. Confusion crossed her face. She looked at her tablet, then at me. I'm sorry, she hesitated. I only have 1 meal under your reservation. I frowned. There should be 2. Before the waitress could continue, Serene casually took a sip of wine. Oh, she shrugged, we didn't order for your daughter. The entire table went quiet. I actually thought I'd misheard her. What? She smiled as though discussing the weather. We figured she's still little. I stared at Elira. She wasn't crying. She was simply looking down at the empty plate in front of her. Then Serene laughed lightly. Kids don't appreciate expensive restaurants anyway. Someone chuckled nervously. Nobody objected. Not one person. I slowly looked around the table. Uncles, aunts, cousins, my own mother. Every face lowered toward their food. Nobody wanted to get involved. Elira leaned toward me and whispered so softly I barely heard her. Daddy. I turned. Am I not invited to eat? My heart shattered. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped across the floor. The waitress looked horrified. I'm so sorry, sir. I can bring something right away. Before I could answer, Serene interrupted again. No need. She smiled directly at me. They can stop somewhere after this. Then she added the sentence that changed everything. I mean, it's not like he's paying for any of this. I looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, with clarity. Because for the first time in my life, I understood that cruelty doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it smiles while everyone else keeps eating. I gently picked up Elira's small jacket from the back of her chair. She looked confused. We're leaving? I knelt beside her. No, sweetheart, I smiled. We're about to do something much more important. As I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope that none of them knew existed, my mother's face suddenly lost all its color. She recognized it instantly, and judging by the fear in her eyes, she knew exactly what was inside.
Every pair of eyes at the table shifted from me to the envelope in my hand. I hadn't planned to bring it out that night.
In fact, I had carried it with me for almost 6 months, waiting for the right moment. Part of me hoped I'd never need to open it. Then my daughter asked if she wasn't invited to eat. That question made the decision for me. I looked at the waitress. "Could you do me one favor?" She nodded immediately. "Of course. Please bring my daughter the nicest meal on the menu." She glanced nervously toward Serene. "I'll be paying for it myself." The waitress gave a small smile. Right away. As she hurried off, Serene rolled her eyes. "Thorn, don't make a scene." I laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was the kind that comes when your heart finally stops expecting people to change. A scene? I slowly placed the envelope on the table. I've spent years avoiding scenes. My mother swallowed hard. "Thorn!" "No." I looked at her. "For once, you're going to listen." The room became so quiet that the piano music outside the private dining room suddenly sounded much louder. I've spent most of my life believing I was the problem. I looked around the table. If someone forgot to invite me, I made excuses. My gaze settled on my uncle. If someone ignored my calls, I blamed bad timing. Then toward one of my cousins. If holidays happened without me, I convinced myself it was an accident. Finally, I looked directly at Serene. But tonight wasn't an accident. She folded her arms. "You're overreacting." I smiled sadly. "My daughter has an empty plate." She didn't answer, because there was nothing she could say. Instead, she shrugged. "Children don't need a 5-course dinner." No, they don't. They need adults who don't humiliate them. My words hung in the air. Even the relatives who usually defended Serene remained silent. My mother reached for the envelope. "Please." I gently moved it away. "Not yet." She closed her eyes. I realized then that she hadn't been surprised. She'd been afraid that one secret she'd helped keep hidden was finally about to come into the light. 5 months earlier, I'd received a phone call from my mother's attorney. At first, I thought something terrible had happened. Instead, the attorney asked me to meet him privately. When I arrived, he locked his office door before speaking. "Your mother doesn't know I'm telling you this." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" He slid several documents across the desk. "I've represented your parents for over 20 years. I recognized my father's signature immediately. I don't understand." "Read page 4. I did. Then page 5. Then page 6. With every line, my hands shook harder. My father hadn't left his estate equally to Serene and me. He had left it entirely to me, not because Serene meant less to him, but because years before he died, he'd quietly discovered that Serene had been stealing money from the family business. Not once, repeatedly. He confronted her. She denied everything. He gathered proof anyway. Then he rewrote his will. His final instruction was painfully simple. "My son Thorin has always chosen peace over conflict. I trust him to use this inheritance wisely. If he believes his sister deserves forgiveness, that decision belongs to him, not to guilt, pressure, or manipulation." But I had never inherited anything, because after Father's funeral, the will that everyone read wasn't the last one. Someone had hidden it. The attorney looked devastated. I discovered the substitution during a routine archive review. "Who knew?" He hesitated. "Your mother." The words hit harder than I expected. "She watched it happen?" He nodded.
She believed exposing the truth would destroy the family. Instead, it had destroyed me. I spent weeks staring at those documents. I wanted answers. I wanted justice. But every time I looked at Elira sleeping peacefully in her room, I asked myself the same question. Would revenge make her childhood better? The answer was always no. So I said nothing until tonight. The waitress returned, carrying a beautiful plate of grilled salmon, vegetables, and mashed potatoes. She gently placed it in front of Elira. "There you are, sweetheart." Elira looked up at me. "Can I eat?" I smiled. "Please," she whispered. "Thank you." Then she began eating as though nothing had happened. Children are incredible that way. They don't care about expensive restaurants. They care about feeling included. I turned back toward my family. I wasn't going to tell anyone. Serene's confidence finally cracked. "What are you talking about?" I opened the envelope. One by one, I laid the documents across the table. The attorney's certification, the original will, the financial records, the evidence, every page.
Weston, my cousin, and an accountant himself, picked one up first. His eyebrows shot upward. "This," he looked at Serene, "is real." She laughed nervously. "No, it isn't." He flipped another page. "It has Father's original seal." Another cousin leaned closer. "So does this." Within seconds, the papers were moving around the table. People stopped eating. Forks rested untouched. The room that had been full of conversation only minutes earlier had become a courtroom without a judge. Serene stood. "He's lying." I calmly slid one final page toward her. A handwritten letter. Our father's handwriting. She recognized it instantly. Her face drained of color. Our father had written one sentence directly beneath his signature. "If this letter is ever seen, it means someone cared more about winning than about family." Serene's hands trembled. My mother started crying. "I'm sorry." Nobody answered her. She looked at me instead. "I thought I could keep everyone together." I spoke quietly. "You didn't keep us together. You protected a lie." Tears streamed down her face. "I was afraid of losing my daughter." "You lost your son." Those words broke something inside her. She covered her face with both hands. Across the table, relatives who had defended Serene for years slowly leaned away from her, not because I asked them to, because the truth was finally sitting in front of them.
Then my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen. It was the attorney. Only 3 words appeared in his message. "They're here now." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Serene noticed. "What does that mean?" I met her eyes. "It means your biggest problem." I paused. "Hasn't even walked through that door yet." Serene stared at me, searching my face for a bluff. She didn't find one. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. Before I could answer, the private dining room door opened. The restaurant manager stepped inside. Behind him were 2 people. The first was the attorney who had called me months earlier. The second was a woman in a navy business suit carrying a leather portfolio. The attorney nodded politely. "I'm sorry to interrupt." The room fell completely silent. The woman introduced herself. "My name is Maris Ello. I'm a forensic accountant appointed by the court regarding the estate of the late Rowan Whale." Every color disappeared from Serene's face. She whispered, "No." Maris placed a folder on the table. Earlier this week, the probate court officially reopened the estate after receiving new evidence.
Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for the papers. The attorney looked at me. "I believe it's time." I slowly nodded. Months ago, after discovering the hidden will, I had been given a choice. I could expose everything immediately,
or I could let the legal process take its course. I chose patience, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted the truth to speak louder than my anger ever could. Maris opened the folder. The investigation confirmed that the final signed will was intentionally concealed. She turned another page. Financial records also confirmed unauthorized transfers from the family business over several years. Every sentence felt heavier than the last. Serene suddenly stood. "This is ridiculous!" Nobody answered her. She pointed at me. "You planned this!" "No." I looked at her calmly. "You planned it years ago." She laughed bitterly. "So this was all a trap?" I shook my head. "No." I glanced toward Alira, who was happily finishing her meal, completely unaware of the storm around her. The trap was believing no one would ever discover the truth. The attorney cleared his throat. "The court has frozen the disputed assets until the matter is resolved."
My uncle finally spoke. "Serene?" His voice cracked. "Tell us this isn't true." She looked around the room. For years, she'd always had an answer, an excuse, someone else to blame. This time, there was only silence. My mother slowly stood from her chair. She walked toward her daughter. For a moment, I thought she was going to defend her again. Instead, she whispered the words none of us expected. "I failed both of my children." Serene looked stunned. "Mom?" "No." Tears rolled down my mother's face. "I kept protecting you because I thought I was keeping the family together." She looked at me. "I watched your father lose sleep over this." Then back to Serene. "And after he died, I let fear decide what was right." She took a shaky breath. "I should have told the truth years ago." The room remained still. Not one person interrupted. Not one person reached for another bite of food. The celebration was over. Only honesty remained. My mother turned toward me. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I answered truthfully, "I've already forgiven you." Hope flickered in her eyes. "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." She nodded slowly. "I know."
Across the table, several relatives who had barely spoken to me in years began approaching. One cousin cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." Another added quietly, "We believed what we were told. I should have called you. I should have asked your side. I'm sorry." One after another, the apologies came. Not because I demanded them, because the truth finally gave them the courage to admit they'd been wrong. Then everyone looked toward Serene. She remained frozen, alone. For the first time in her life, there was no one left standing behind her. She looked at me. "What happens now?" I answered honestly, "That's up to the court. You could stop this." "I could." She took a step closer. "Please." Those 5 letters carried more desperation than anything she'd ever said to me. "I'll lose everything." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I quietly asked the question I'd carried inside me since Leora's funeral. "When my daughter sat here with an empty plate," my voice stayed calm, "what exactly did you think she was supposed to lose?" Serene opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because there was no answer, no explanation, no excuse powerful enough to erase that moment. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my wallet. Inside was the only photograph I carried every day. Leora holding Alira in the hospital garden just weeks before she passed away. I looked at the picture for a second, then smiled. Not because I was happy, because I remembered the promise I'd made. Don't let her grow up believing she's unwanted. That promise had guided every decision I'd made since losing my wife.
including this one. I turned to the attorney. The company father built employed nearly 60 families. He nodded. It did. I don't want innocent employees paying for mistakes they never made. Maris looked up. There are legal options that would allow the business to continue under new management. I smiled. Good. Serene frowned. You'd save the company? I'll save the people. She stared at me in disbelief. But not me? I shook my head. You made your own choices. The court proceedings lasted months. When everything was finalized, the hidden will was recognized as valid. The stolen funds were recovered as much as the law allowed. The family business survived, but only after being restructured under independent management. The employees kept their jobs. No one lost their pensions. That mattered far more to me than owning another company. As for the inheritance, most people expected me to spend it on a larger house, a luxury car, something impressive. Instead, I created the Leora Foundation, named after the woman who taught me that real strength is measured by kindness, not pride.
The foundation provided emergency financial assistance, counseling, and meals for widowed parents raising young children alone, because I knew exactly how lonely those nights could be. Months later, Alira and I visited the community center funded by the foundation. Children were laughing. Parents were smiling. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. As we walked back to the car, Alira slipped her small hand into mine. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart?" "Mommy would like this place." I smiled toward the evening sky. "I think she already does." She looked up at me. "Are we a little family?" I knelt beside her. "No." She tilted her head. "We're a strong family." She wrapped her tiny arms around my neck. "I like that better." So did I, because I finally understood something my father had tried to teach me before he died. Family isn't the people who share your last name. Family is the people who make sure your child never has to wonder whether she deserves a seat at the table. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for someone you love, tell me in the comments, what would you have done?